Have you ever wondered why we spend our lives pretending to be strong, when deep down, we're barely holding it together? You wake up, put on the mask, and walk into the world like nothing can break you. You say, "I'm fine." You laugh at pain. You work yourself to exhaustion just to prove you're unshakable. But behind the silence, behind the smiles, there's a storm no one sees. And the truth is, that storm is killing you. Society has sold you a lie, that being tough means being emotionless. That real men don't cry, that pain makes you weak. But what if that's the very illusion that's destroying you from within? What if the armor you wear isn't protection but a cage? You see, acting tough is easy. Anyone can fake strength. But to stay soft in a hard world that takes something divine. To feel deeply when the world tells you to numb yourself, that's courage. To say, "I'm hurting," and not be ashamed, that's power. And the most terrifying part, most people will never know this kind of strength, because they're too busy pretending they already have it. Maybe you've felt it too, that quiet exhaustion of having to be the strong one all the time. Maybe you've realized that no amount of control, success, or discipline ever fills the hollow space inside. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop acting tough and start being real. So stay with me, because what you're about to hear might shake everything you think you know about strength and about yourself. If this message already resonates with you, don't look away now. Watch this video until the end. I promise, you'll walk away seeing yourself differently. And if you find even a spark of truth in these words, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, so you'll be the first to know when I release the next video that will go even deeper into the shadows, the soul, and the freedom waiting beneath your pain. Because today, we're not just talking about strength, we're redefining it. He doesn't cry at his father's funeral. He stands there, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the ground, repeating the same sentence in his mind. Be strong. Don't lose control. Friends pat him on the back. You're holding up well, man. But no one sees the pressure building inside his chest, the scream that never escapes. A few months later, his girlfriend leaves him. He smiles and says, "It's fine. I'm focusing on my goals." He posts gym pictures, motivational quotes, and keeps his schedule packed. He calls it discipline. But late at night, when the house is silent and the phone stops buzzing, he lies awake staring at the ceiling, wondering why the silence feels like it's crushing his ribs. This is the modern man. The one society calls strong. The one who's been taught since childhood that emotions are the enemy, that vulnerability is weakness, that real men don't feel. He learned early how to build walls, thick, invisible ones. He learned to swallow pain and turn it into silence. He learned that no matter what happens, he must always stay composed. Controlled, invincible. But here is the quiet tragedy. Every wall he builds to protect himself also keeps him from feeling alive. At work, he's relentless. 70 hours a week, never missing a day. He pushes through exhaustion because the grind gives him purpose, or at least the illusion of it. When his body screams for rest, he calls it self-discipline. When his mind begins to crack, he tells himself it's just stress. But what he doesn't realize is that he's not building strength, he's building armor so heavy that he can no longer move freely. You call it discipline, but it's self-punishment disguised as pride. Because deep down, the truth he can't face is this: all that control, all that stoicism, all that cold composure isn't strength, it's fear. Fear of breaking. Fear of being seen as fragile. Fear of losing the image that's been carved into him by fathers, coaches, movies, and men who were just as lost as he is now. He walks through life like a statue, perfectly still, perfectly composed, perfectly dead inside. He shakes hands, closes deals, pays bills, and posts smiles. But he hasn't felt in years. Not joy, not grief, not love, just the dull hum of survival. And every night, when he turns off the light, there's a small, trembling part of him that whispers, "I'm tired of this. Tired of pretending. Tired of holding everything together. Tired of carrying the burden of appearing unbreakable." Because real strength doesn't feel like control. It feels like honesty. It feels like finally exhaling after years of holding your breath. But he doesn't know that yet. He still believes the myth that if he just works harder, stays busier, cares less, he'll feel whole again. He won't, because you can't heal what you refuse to feel. And the more he hides behind the armor, the more he loses touch with himself, until one day he looks in the mirror and sees a stranger staring back. That's when it hits him. All those years spent trying to be strong were actually years spent running away, running from pain, running from fear, running from himself. And now, he's not sure who he's supposed to be without the mask. Maybe that's you. Maybe that's every man you know. And maybe that is the reason we all so lonely, because we trapped inside images of strength that were never real to begin with. But here is the truth no one tells you. You don't need to act tough to be powerful. You need to be real to be free. So take a deep breath, because in a moment, we're going to go deeper into the mind itself, where this illusion of toughness was born. If this story feels like a mirror, if you've ever found yourself living behind that same mask, share your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and your words might be the one that helps another man finally drop his armor. We live in a culture that glorifies toughness. We celebrate the stoic face, the unshaken voice, the man who never breaks. But behind this ideal lies a dangerous misunderstanding, a distortion of strength so deep that it is destroying millions of men from the inside out. Acting tough isn't a strength. It's a defense mechanism, a psychological armor built not from courage, but from fear. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the dark, hidden side of the psyche that we refuse to acknowledge. It holds everything we reject: our shame, our fear, our sensitivity, our need for love. Jung said, "What you reject within yourself will one day rule you from the dark." When you pretend to be invincible, when you hide your tenderness, when you swallow your pain to appear strong, you don't destroy your weakness, you simply bury it alive. And the more you bury it, the more power it gains. It starts whispering in your mind at night, leaking through anger, cynicism, and emotional numbness. That's not control. That's your shadow taking over. Freud called this repression, the act of pushing unwanted emotions into the unconscious until they rot. He warned that what the mind represses doesn't disappear, it transforms. Repressed sadness becomes rage. Repressed fear becomes control. Repressed vulnerability becomes a desperate hunger for dominance. That's why so many men walk through life like ticking bombs, calm on the outside, chaos within. They say, "I'm fine," but they're not. They're disconnected from their own humanity. They mistake suppression for strength and numbness for peace. But numbness is not peace, it's paralysis. Look closer at the men who pride themselves on being unshakable. You'll often find restlessness behind their eyes, a silent tension in their bodies, a need to control everything around them because they've lost the ability to feel safe within themselves. They don't trust softness because softness reminds them of what they buried long ago. Nietzsche saw this trap long before modern psychology gave it a name. He said, "You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star." What he meant was this: inner chaos, pain, fear, heartbreak isn't your enemy. It's the raw material from which strength is forged. Real strength isn't found in avoidance. It's born in confrontation. Acting tough is fake steel, brittle, shiny, hollow. It looks strong until life strikes it once, and it shatters. Real strength is forged steel, shaped in the fire of pain, hammered by truth, cooled in acceptance. It doesn't pretend to be unbreakable. It knows its cracks and still stands firm. The difference is subtle, but it changes everything. The man who acts tough says, "I don't care." The man who's truly strong says, "I care deeply." and I can handle the weight of it. One hides. The other transforms. Modern psychology backs this up. Studies on emotional repression show that men who suppress feelings of sadness and vulnerability experience higher rates of anxiety, heart disease, and loneliness. Their nervous systems stay in fight or flight mode even when life is calm. Because you can't fight yourself and be at peace at the same time. And the irony? The very thing they fear, emotion, is the key to the freedom they crave. Because emotion is energy. When expressed consciously, it heals. When suppressed, it consumes. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's the truth behind the tough guy act. You think you're in control, but it's the unacknowledged parts of you, the pain, the fear, the longing, that are pulling the strings. To heal, you must look where you've then never dared to look, into the parts of yourself you were taught to hate. Because what you reject doesn't vanish. It waits, and when you finally face it, something extraordinary happens. The mask begins to crack, the numbness fades, and beneath all the pretense, you find something that was never weak at all, the strength to be real. So the next time you feel the urge to man up, to hide your tears, to tighten your jaw, remember this. You're not suppressing pain, you're suppressing truth. And truth always finds a way to rise. If this resonates with you, if you've ever felt the cost of pretending to be fine, share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me your story, your struggle, your truth. I read them all. And maybe your honesty will give someone else permission to stop pretending too. Let's strip this down to the world we live in, the world outside the books, outside the theories, outside the quotes. Look around, you'll see the illusion of toughness everywhere. The soldier who returns from war and can to talk about what he's seen, because in his mind, admitting trauma means defeat. The CEO who earns millions but hasn't felt genuine joy in years, because success became a cage he can't escape from. The father who tells his son, "Stop crying, be a man," not realizing he's passing down the same wound that once silenced him. This isn't a strength. It's emotional inheritance, generation after generation of men taught to equate numbness with control. But here's what's fascinating. When these men finally break, when the armor cracks, something miraculous happens. They rediscover humanity. Take the story of Navy SEAL Commander Mark Devine. For years, he embodied the definition of toughness, discipline, dominance, control, until one day, his body collapsed. He described it later as a soul-level breakdown. In therapy, he realized his so-called discipline was an addiction to control, a fear of vulnerability dressed as courage. When he began meditation, breathwork, and emotional awareness, something shifted. He said, "The day I stopped proving I was strong was the first day I actually was." Then there's Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. The world knows him as indestructible. But a few years ago, he opened up publicly about his battle with depression, admitting that his silence almost killed him. Millions of men saw that moment. For the first time, they saw that power isn't about unbreakable muscles. It's about unbreakable honesty. Even in the sports world, where strength is worshipped, the illusion is collapsing. When Olympic champion Michael Phelps admitted that his depression drove him to the edge of suicide, people were shocked. But his words became a lifeline for others drowning in the same silence. He said, "It's okay to not be okay." And that single phrase broke a generational spell. You see, the modern man isn't weak because he feels. He's weak because he refuses to feel. He's disconnected from his emotional intelligence, the very compass that guides authenticity, empathy, and connection. When you bury emotion, you bury intuition. And when intuition dies, all that's left is performance. Psychological research supports this truth. The American Psychological Association found that emotional suppression is one of the strongest predictors of burnout and social isolation in men. A 2018 Harvard Medical School study discovered that men who score higher on emotional openness have significantly lower cortisol levels, meaning they are biologically calmer, healthier, and more resilient. And perhaps most shocking, the World Health Organization linked rigid gender roles and emotional repression to higher suicide rates among men. Pretending to be tough isn't harmless. It kills, but let's shift, because this story isn't about death. It's about rebirth. There's a growing movement, quiet, profound, unstoppable. Men's groups, retreats, online communities, where men gather not to boast, but to feel. They sit in circles, they talk about fear, about shame, about love, about loss. And when they cry, no one tells them to man up. They tell them, welcome home. That's real strength. The strength to sit in your pain without needing to fix it. The strength to say, I don't know, I'm scared, or I'm hurting, and still hold your head high. Because when you stop performing, when you stop wearing the armor, the world doesn't fall apart. It finally becomes real. You start to see that strength was never about the size of your muscles, your paycheck, or your status. It was always about your capacity to stay human in a world that worships machines. And once you taste that, once you experience the quiet power that comes from being honest with yourself, you realize something radical. You were never weak. You were just pretending to be someone you weren't. So, look around again. Look at the men who dare to be open, who dare to feel, who dare to love fully even after being broken. That's what real strength looks like. It's not loud. It doesn't need to prove anything. It doesn't demand respect. It earns it through presence, compassion, and depth. And if you think that's soft, you've misunderstood everything. Because to walk through the fire of your own emotions and still stand tall, that's the kind of courage no act can imitate. If these stories resonate with you, if you've seen yourself or someone you love in them, share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me what moment hit you hardest, what truth you've been running from, what mask you're ready to drop. I read every word, and your story might just be the mirror another person needs to finally find their strength again. Real strength doesn't look like what we've been told. It isn't in the flexed jaw, the cold stare, or the silence that hides pain. It's not in dominance, control, or the ability to keep moving while your heart is breaking. Real strength begins the moment you stop pretending to be strong. It starts quietly, often in darkness. When you sit alone, exhausted from holding everything together, and whisper the words you've avoided your whole life. I can't do this anymore. That isn't a weakness. It's truth breaking through the mask. It's the soul saying, enough. Carl Jung called this moment the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming whole. He believed that true strength is born when you integrate every part of yourself. The courage and the fear, the confidence and the doubt, the light and the shadow. Because what you refuse to face will rule you from within. And the emotions you've been taught to bury, fear, grief, tenderness, are not your enemies. They are the raw materials from which authenticity is forged. You don't destroy pain by ignoring it. You transform it by understanding it. The illusion of toughness teaches men to hide their humanity. But when you suppress sadness, you also suppress joy. When you numb fear, you numb love. And when you numb love, you lose connection, the very essence of being alive. The Harvard study of adult development, one of the longest-running studies in history, discovered something extraordinary. Emotional openness, not wealth, not status, not toughness, is the strongest predictor of health and happiness. Men who allowed themselves to feel, to connect, to express, lived longer, loved deeper, and carried less fear. The truth is simple. Vulnerability doesn't drain strength. It renews it. Dr. Brené Brown said it best. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's courage and action. It's not falling apart. It's standing in the storm and saying, I'm still here. It's allowing yourself to feel and trusting that your feelings won't destroy you. That is power. And when you live that way, something shifts. You stop trying to impress people. You stop performing. You no longer need to prove that you're unbreakable. because you've made peace with the fact that you can break and heal. That's real resilience. Jordan Peterson often says that true strength isn't about control but responsibility, taking ownership of your inner world, of your suffering, of your potential. To say, "This is my pain, and I will turn it into something meaningful." That's what separates power from pretense. So what does real strength look like? It is not a man who never cries. It is one who can cry and still rise the next day. It's not a woman who hides her fear. It's one who can say, "I'm scared," and still keep going. It's not about avoiding emotion. It's about channeling it into understanding, empathy, and truth. Strength isn't about holding everything together. It's about knowing when to let go. It's about having the courage to say, "I need help," and the humility to receive it. The strongest people are not the ones who never break. They're the ones who've shattered and rebuilt themselves with open hearts. They don't wear armor anymore. They've become the fire that once threatened to consume them. Real strength isn't forged in control, achievement, or status. It's forged in honesty, in the willingness to face everything you are, without judgment. Every tear you've hidden, every fear you've silenced, every moment you thought made you weak, that was the invitation to become whole. You are not broken. You are awakening. And when you stop fighting yourself, when you allow your humanity to exist without shame, you step into a strength that no one can take away. A strength that doesn't shout, doesn't perform, doesn't need to prove. It simply is. So breathe. You've spent years trying to be strong. Now dare to be honest. Because honesty is where strength begins, and it's the only place where freedom lives. If these words touched something inside you, share your story in the comments. Tell me what truth you've been hiding, what moment broke you open, or what lesson taught you real strength. I read every one of them, and your voice might be the light that helps someone else find theirs. Stop acting tough. Start being real. Because the world doesn't need another man who hides his pain behind a perfect smile. It doesn't need more people pretending they've got it all figured out. It needs human beings who are awake, who've walked through the fire, faced their own chaos, and emerged softer, deeper, truer. Maybe for years you've worn the armor, the busy schedule, the sarcasm, the emotional distance. You've called it strength, but deep down, you know it was just survival. A defense mechanism built to keep you safe in a world that told you your heart was a liability. And yet, here you are, still breathing, still searching, still aching for something real. That ache is not weakness. It's your soul remembering who you are. Because strength was never about how much you could carry. It's about how deeply you can feel and still move forward. It's about the courage to stand in your truth when it would be easier to hide. It's about facing your pain without numbing it. About standing your ground with an open heart. You see, the strongest people you'll ever meet aren't the ones who never cry. They're the ones who cry and still show up for life the next morning. They're the ones who love again after being shattered, who forgives even when it hurts, who stays kind in a world that rewards cruelty. That's the revolution we need. Not louder men, not tougher hearts, but deeper souls. Souls that know compassion is not weakness. That vulnerability is not a failure. That silence doesn't mean indifference. Sometimes it means mastery. When you stop performing, when you drop the armor, you stop surviving and start living. You start feeling again, really feeling. The air tastes different. Music sounds deeper. The world looks softer. Because the filters of fear and pride have fallen away. And that's when you realize, all along strength was never hiding your scars. It was learning to wear them openly. Every line on your face, every scar on your heart, every tear you've ever shed, they're not signs of defeat. They're proof you lived fully, loved deeply, and refused to give up on yourself. So let me ask you now, what if the bravest thing you could ever do is stop pretending you refine? What if true power begins the moment you whisper, "I'm not okay, but I'm still here"? Because real strength is not how hard you can hit. It is how open you can remain when life hits you. And when you finally stop resisting that truth, you'll notice something miraculous. The fear fades. The pressure dissolves. And in its place comes a stillness, a calm power that no one can shake. That's what being real feels like. It's not a weakness, it's freedom. If this message reached you, if even one sentence echoed something you've been afraid to face, then stay connected. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you'll know the moment the next piece drops. Because this journey doesn't end here. We're just getting started. And before you go, share your truth in the comments. Tell me what part of this spoke to you the loudest, what pain you're finally ready to stop carrying, or what freedom you just found inside yourself. I read them all. And together, we're building something rare, a space where being human is no longer shameful, but sacred. Because once you stop acting tough and start being real, you'll realize you were never weak, you were just waiting to be free.